You're listening to Apashish, a Cree learning podcast.
Because as a language speaker, I think it's really important for me to do my part in preserving the language. And I know there's a lot of people out there, I think, that are trying to reconnect and trying to learn their language. And I thought it would be, a really nice way to help, do my part and do it through music and make these songs in Cree so that people could enjoy. People could go and sing along and sing the words and learn them, memorize them like you would memorize any other song. And it would be like speaking your own language at the same time.
Hi everyone, and welcome to episode 5 of Apashish, a Cree learning podcast. It's now January. It's the word we have in Cree for January, which literally means great shedding needle moon. So it's a time when the evergreens in the bush are shedding their needles. And I asked my mom, how do we say Happy New Year in Cree? And she said, Minoashki Pupun, which just means good new winter. Minoashki Pupun. So Minu means like good. Ushke means new. It's also what we say for Monday, Ushkekijigao, which means new day, to indicate the start of a new week. And Pupun means winter. And January, or Geshe Babi Oatekanam, signifies the start of winter. As Greg Spence said in the last episode, for December, we're still in the freezing up phase, Mikaskau. We're still in Mikaskau. So we're now in Pipun. So it makes sense that instead of saying like literally Happy New Year or what have you, at this time we say Mino Pipun, Happy New Winter. And actually in our culture, in the Cree culture, the new year would actually start in Mikasui Bisum, which means eagle moon, and what most of the world knows as March. And that is when Sequin is starting. Sequin means spring. It's when the earth is waking up and we're starting a new cycle for the year. And actually my mom provided me this this chart or diagram developed by the Muskego Education Department, and it has all the seasons and the months written in Cree with the explanations, and it's all in this big circle to indicate the cycle that we have throughout the year. And at the very top is Mikasui Bisum, so the eagle moon, and that's the start of our new year, basically. So just some learnings that I've also been learning about our culture for you, and some Cree words to start off this episode. So during the holidays, I started to watch a show called Chief of War. It's on Apple TV. A friend had recommended this to me, and I was a little unsure about her recommendations because she's a huge fan of Jason Momoa, and he's the star of the show, and we see him in the loincloth a lot. So I was kind of like, I don't know if it'll be that great. But actually, it really is a fantastic show. So Chief of War is a story about the 4 Hawaiian kingdoms before the islands were colonized back in the 1800s, or about 1800 or so. So these 4 kingdoms, Hawaii, Maui, Oahu, and Kauai, and I'm sure I'm butchering that. These 4 kingdoms were at war with each other, and then they go through these conflicts throughout the miniseries, and they must unite before these settlers arrive in force. They have already had contact with Europeans and whatnot. It takes place after they had killed Captain James Cook, and that's mentioned in the show, but now we have people who want to come settle there, and we see them interact with these settlers. At the same time, these communities are at war with each other. There's a lot of conflict in politics. And of course, we have the beautiful scenery and cinematography and some action and whatnot. But yeah, it's a really great show. And what I really like about it is that the dialogue with the main characters, the Native Hawaiians, they're speaking in the language, which is Ōlelo Hawaiʻi. And I'm sure I butchered that too, but that's um, their indigenous Hawaiian language. And Jason Momoa, his father is Native Hawaiian, but he never learned the language himself. So he did so for the show. And he said it was actually harder to learn than Dothraki. So if you know his career, he was in Game of Thrones, and he plays a leader of this group called the Dothraki, and they speak a language which is a totally made up language that they created for the series because it's based on books. I don't know if the language itself exists in the books, but it does definitely for the show. And he had to learn that, but he said that learning his own language was actually more difficult. And they main authenticity by having language consultants on the set, and even going so far as to say, to tell the actors they have to redo a take because they messed up a word. Again, it has the great cinematography and the performances, and we also see the culture and the history and, of course, the language. And one thing I got a kick out of is the way they refer to the settlers is paleskins. Like it's in the subtitle when they're speaking their language and it says paleskins. The paleskins are going to come back. So I thought that was funny. And it did make me think about the word that we use in Cree for white people. So the word we use is mushtakushu. And I thought it might refer to the color white or something, but apparently it literally means he has a wooden boat, which I imagine would just be because they never seen those types of boats before when the Europeans arrived in the James Bay area. So Wemashtakushu, he has a wooden boat. So I thought that was interesting. So another thing over the holidays was there was another news story that came out about the podcast. CBC Indigenous contacted me back in November, did an interview, and they also contacted one of my past guests, Jocelyn Chichu from episode 2, and also one of our listeners, Father Matadawabin, who's also one of my former colleagues, and she had messaged me regarding the podcast, so I put her in touch with the CBC reporter, Kansas Miracle, and the story came out on Christmas Eve. So that was a nice surprise and nice timing for this coverage about the podcast. So I really appreciate CBC Indigenous for reaching out. And you can find a link to the story on our website, apashishpodcast.ca. You can find it through a blog update that I had posted and also under the news tab on our homepage. So thanks again, Shtamegwech, to CBC Indigenous. So for my learning update, in the last episode, I talked about the book Fluent Forever by Gabriel Wyner, who says he could speak 7 other languages. So I've been going through that. And the key strategy, the key takeaway in this system is to use flashcards and use what's called a spaced repetition system. So let me break this down. First of all, you start with the flashcards, and you can make them online, and he provides a link to this software, but I prefer to actually make mine. I bought some index cards from Dollarama. And in making these flashcards, don't use any English. Instead, you use images with the word that you're trying to learn on the other side. And it's best to keep it as simple as possible with only one answer for the correct word, as opposed to like having multiple layers, like 2 words, or like let's say I wanted to learn syllabic, so I have it written in the Roman orthography plus the syllabics. Like that apparently isn't so great for this system. It's best just to be as simple as possible. So what words do you learn for this? He provides 621 words, which are fairly common words, and according to him, and he cites some sources in there, the 625 words make up around 75% of most conversations in most languages. So it's common words in categories like animals, transportation, locations, clothing, people, jobs, home, food, body, nature, materials, months, days, numbers, time, verbs, and so on. And it provides a list of these words in the book. And they're also available online, so you can print them out. But yeah, so he suggests you use these 625 words, or you can pick other words outside of this that are specific to your needs. So, which I've done at times related to like being out on the land and hunting and whatnot. So, what I did was I printed out the list and I got my index cards and I would sit down and go through the list and find the Cree word using the Eastern Swampy and Moose Cree dictionary, which is available online. And I would write the word down in Roman orthography. And I would try my best to draw an image related to that word. I would use a pencil, and he says it's the more specific the image, the better. Like if there's a specific memory or place associated with that word, to use that. So, for example, for the word camp, I drew a picture of my camp, which is Kapewan. East, Wabanuk. I drew a picture of the bunch of trees that are east of my goose hunting blind, where my family camp is. Basisal, the word for burn. And I drew a picture of a fire and someone burning a goose, because that's what we do when we're goose hunting. We after we pluck it, we burn, like singe off the extra little feathers and little hairs over an open fire. So I drew a picture of a goose, someone's hand holding the goose with the fire. So basisal. So I created all these flashcards, and there were some challenges because sometimes this online Cree dictionary didn't have all the words, or sometimes there was multiple definitions. And a lot of that is related to because there's an animate version of the word or an inanimate, because in our language, we separate certain words and verbs on whether they're animate, meaning living, or inanimate, meaning like they're non living, like an object and whatnot. And also the type of verb, whether it's transitive or intransitive. Transitive meaning like the verb needs the object in order to work within the sentence, or intransitive meaning it could just work on its own and it can complete the thought. So I just try my best to pick the most suitable word that came to mind, if there are different versions. And as long as you get kind of the base word in there, the more basic fundamental sound of the word, because usually there is just a small change in the syllable or maybe an additional couple syllables to that made them different. So I would just do my best to pick what I felt was the best one and go with that. But yeah, that's how I created my flashcards. And mind you, I didn't do all 625 in one sitting. I've done them in kind of in bunches. Earlier this week, I had to sit down and make some more because I was running out after my first batch of 100 or so. So that's the flashcard part. So, how do we use these flashcards? Well, in this system, uh, from this book, Fluent Forever, he says we use what's called the Leitner system, which is a spaced repetition technique for learning with flashcards. Cards are sorted into levels based on how well the material is known. Correctly answered cards progress to levels that you don't need to review as often, while incorrect ones are moved back to the first level for more frequent review. It turns the learning process into a game where the aim is to have your flashcards for as far along the chain of levels as possible. So, just to further explain this, there are 7 levels, and level 1 is basically what you would do every day. Your new cards, you have 15 to 30 cards he recommends for every day. Usually I put in 15. And you memorize those for the day, and then you put them into the next level, level 2. And there's a 64-day schedule on what you're supposed to review each day. So every day has a level 1 with the new cards. Level 2 is every other day. Level 3 is every 4 or 5 days. Level 4 is about every 10 days, and so on until level 7, which is once every 64 days. So on a day that you might have to do level 3 plus level 1, on the days that I'm doing the level 3, I look at the card, look at the image, and if I get it right, it moves on to the next one. But if I get it incorrect, I have to put it back all the way to level 1 and put it through the whole system again. So I don't know if that makes sense if you're following me, but that's how the system works. So I have this box that I created with these little tabs to indicate which level. And I have my flashcards, and after I memorize them, put it to the next level. And, if I forget them, I put it back to level 1 and so on. And each day I also have the new set of cards for the day. And when I'm memorizing the new cards, I do about 3 or 5 at a time. Like I look at the image, and if I have no idea, I just look at the word and I say it to myself over and over until I feel like I have it memorized. Do the next card, and then the next card, and maybe up to 5 of them. Then I go back to the first card, see if I remember. More often than not, I don't. So say it over and over again. And I just repeat that until I remember them all for that little bunch. And then I move on to the next set of cards, whether that's 3 to 5 cards. Do the same thing. Then the next set. And then once I'm done that to all 15 or whatever new cards I have for the day, I go through them all in a row. And those that I get correct, I set those aside. Those that I forget or get incorrect, I put those in a separate bunch. And I go through all the 15 cards or so. And the ones that I forgot, I go through it all again until I have them all memorized, and I do one final go through of all the cards for the day. And yeah, and then once I do that with this new set of cards, I put them in level 2, and I'm done for the day. And if I had a bunch of cards for that day that I had forgotten, like let's say I did level 3 and I forgot maybe half of them, so I put them back in level 1 for the day, and I do those as well on top of the new ones. Again, I hope this is making sense. It feels like it's complicated, and I know it took me a while to understand how the system worked too at first, and I had to reread the part in the book that described how this is supposed to work, but I got it down now, and I think it's a pretty effective system. So as of this recording, I'm at day 12 in the schedule. I have close to 200 cards that are in the deck. Not to say I have 200 words memorized, but 200 cards that are in there that I've at least read at some point. I would say I have most of them memorized, but we'll see as time goes on, right? And as I go through the different levels, we'll see how much I'll remember once I get to level 5. And these would be cards I would have first started reviewing back on day 1, right? So far, I reviewed up to level 3, and my success rate is around just over 50% at least, meaning that when I got to level 3, it had been days since I last reviewed these cards, and I was able to correctly recall just more than half of them. And the other remainder I had to put back in level 1. And I'm not sure if that's a good success rate. The ones I do get incorrect, I'm usually only off by one syllable. I just get one little tiny part wrong. But for the most part, I had it correct. So It's not like I had no recollection at all, although that did happen a couple of times for level 2. But yeah, I don't know. I think that's good. But overall, it can be challenged at times, and I've definitely had moments of frustration. Like there were a few specific words that I just struggle with so much. And I think recently they advanced to level 2. And yeah, I just couldn't get it. Like I would always forget. But there are some words that are just kind of easy that I'm able to recall. So, but overall, I think I'm able to recall most of them pretty well. So I'm quite happy with the progress, and I'm happy that I have this system and I have the schedule. I have a routine. Usually, I do it near the end of the day when I review the cards, and that's just part of my routine. And I've been doing it consistently and every day. So that's where I'm at with my learning to date. My guest this month is Adrian Sutherland. Adrian is a roots rocker with heart from the remote village of Attawapiskat in Ontario's far north. His melding of roots, rock, folk, and blues creates a signature sound and style, all his own, drawing inspiration from his life, the land, and his Cree language and culture. Adrian earned Juno nominations in 2022 and 2025 and won Best Americana Album from the 2025 World Entertainment Awards in Los Angeles. His sophomore album, Precious Diamonds, was recorded in Nashville with Grammy winner Colin Linden and released in 2024. Named one of the top 100 albums of 2024 by CKUA Radio, it features 2 songs in Cree, marking the first time Adrian is making music in his first language. Lead single Natawi, which is Cree for father, reached number 1 on the internationally recognized Indigenous Music Countdown and ranked in the top 100 songs of 2023 by CBC Music. Before his solo career, Adrian was the singer and songwriter for the band Midnight Shine, where they released 3 studio albums. Adrian recently completed writing his first book for Penguin Random House Canada. The Work of Our Hands, a Cree Meditation on the Real World, was released on December 30th, 2025, and gives readers a glimpse into his extraordinary life in Attawapiskat. As one of the only professional recording artists who lives in an isolated flying community, Adrian carries firsthand insight and perspective on many of today's most important issues facing First Nations. You definitely know who Adrian is if you're from the James Bay area. It's not uncommon to see him at community events where there's music performances. First met him when he was with Midnight Shine. There's this one song that I really love that they play called James Bay. James Bay will always be my way. James Bay is who I am today. And there's the line that really resonates with me. Home of the Mushkeg Goa Cree, that's where I wanna be. Sitting at camp, sipping on tea. That line really hit home for me, especially when I was living in Toronto. It made me miss being at spring camp with my dad and my brother and my uncles and cousins, so I have a deep affection for that song. Even though I've seen him many times over the years, never really got to sit down and get to know him. It was great to do that and to have this conversation for this episode. We spoke last month before his book was officially released, so I didn't get a chance to read it before the interview. But in this conversation, we talked about his journey from growing up in Attawapiskat and going out on the land to his first performance on stage and eventually to writing his book, which just came out. Here's my conversation with Adrian Sutherland. Thank you much for joining me here, Adrian. So, did you want to introduce yourself however you like?
Yeah, sure. Hello, everyone. My name is Adrian Sutherland. I'm from the Attawapiskat First Nation, located up in Northern Ontario on the west coast of James Bay. I'm a musician and now a new author as well.
Right. Yeah, we'll definitely get to that to talk about your upcoming book. So, you were born in Attawapiskat?
I wasn't actually born in Attawapiskat. I was actually, most people in those days were being sent south for birthing. I was born in Ottawa. actually, the nation's capital.
Hmm. And who are your parents?
My mom is Agnes Sutherland, and my father his name was David Shapiro.
Oh, okay. And what did they do, like for work?
Well, my mom worked hard out in the bush. She spent a lot of time helping my grandfather. Um, she did work for the grocery store in Moosonee, actually, when we were down in Moosonee for a little bit. But as far as work goes, I mean, she didn't really go beyond that. She was more of a stay-at-home mom. My father, he did a lot of various different things. He worked out in the bush a lot. Did silviculture, actually? Did a lot of tree planting and different things like that. So as a child, we did spend a lot of time out in the bush doing things like that in Northern Ontario with my dad. So yeah,
And how many siblings do you have?
seven. There's seven of us total. I have four sisters and two brothers.
Okay. And where are you in that? Like, are you near the oldest or the youngest?
Yeah, I'm the third oldest. Yeah, almost in the middle there, but not quite.
And did you grow up with all of them?
Not really. No, actually, we didn't really grow up together. We were separated, as children for various reasons. So we didn't really actually get to spend a lot of time together growing up. It wasn't until we got into our late teens where we started to come back together as a family.
Oh, okay. And you said you're from Attawapiskat. You spent some time in Moosonee. Like, how did you mostly grow up in Attawapiskat, or?
Yeah, I mostly grew up in Attawapiskat. I spent most of my life in Attawapiskat, with little bits little bits of time in like Moosonee and maybe Timmins and a few other places when I was young because we were bouncing around for a little bit. And but majority of my life I've been in Attawapiskat. I grew up there. I left for school, high school and college, and did some work in the West for a bit. But yeah, majority of my life I've been up there.
And what was it like growing up in your community for you?
Well, I mean, there's it's different. It's very unique. I think in a lot of ways. We didn't have, for one example I would use is we didn't have any running water, so that was an everyday thing that we had to do was collect, water for drinking, for washing, and different things like that. In the winter, would be snow ice that we'd have to go collect and melt, or we'd have to collect it from a hole that was kept open all winter long in the main channel. So that was, quite something I always remembered. It's just, etched into my memory, and yeah, it be sort of as soon as I could carry, a bucket, or I was able to do that, it sort of became my sole responsibility as a young boy to make sure that we always had that in the home. Helping my grandmother and making sure she had everything, the water and everything she needed to cook and to wash and different things like that. Some of the other things, hunting was big, so a lot of families were out on the land quite a bit. Spent a lot of time out there and doing different things like cutting wood with my grandparents and my mom, and just going about my life on snowshoes as a young man and as a young boy. My grandfather made snowshoes for us when we were children. So, some of those tools that he gave us tethered us to the land and allowed us to kind of go out, and do those things. Yeah, I mean, I would describe it as a very, very simple but hard, hard life. And, went to school in grade school, went through that whole experience. I went to Indian day school. So that was, there were a lot of ups and downs, and in that, with that whole experience, it wasn't always good, but it wasn't always bad either. So yeah, it was a very different kind of upbringing.
Hmm. And so you mentioned growing up hunting. Um, so you would go out, I imagine, like on the for the spring goose hunt and moose hunting in the fall. How old were you when you got your first goose?
Oh boy, see, I'm trying to remember. I might have been maybe 8 or 9.
Oh.
My grandfather used to take me, out. We used to go. There was a blind just adjacent to the community that a lot of these elders would share. So my grandfather and I would walk out to the blind from our house. He would take me out with him every day in the spring. At that time, my grandfather was not traveling very far because he was getting, old and elderly. So he wasn't like traveling very far at that time. So we were going to this blind that was adjacent to the community and shared by other elders, and we were hunting in that blind. And I think that's where I got my first goose. I was able to shoot with 410, and he also let me use a 22 as well, 20 a little small caliber rifle. Yeah, so yeah, that was my first memory, my first real experience with shooting and you know killing a goose.
Wow, pretty young. I was 11 when I got mine.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, like, did you guys have like a family spring camp that you guys would go out to?
Yeah, I mean, we've had they moved around quite a bit. I know my grandfather didn't quite really he wasn't really spending, spring goose hunting in one area. A lot of families were actually moving around just in a tent, eh? There were no real like cabins and stuff like that. People moved around quite a bit actually. I think as I got a little older, we did settle into a couple of areas where my family has their traditional territories, which is about 90 miles north of Attawapiskat. That's where we have our main fish and goose camp, and we have another couple other camps as well south of that we've been using as well for either overnighting, warming, and then hunting as well.
Hmm. Not sure how it works up there. Like, do you guys like people in the community? Like, are you aware of where people's families have their camps and stuff, and you're careful about like not encroaching on those, or how does that work?
Yeah, traditionally, yes, I think people have really stayed clear of each other's territory. We try to respect each other's hunting areas and not go into those areas unless, of course, we have the blessing from that particular clan to go into that area. Nowadays, I see people just overstepping some of those boundaries and just going in and like for example, where I live. I mean, where our camp is, people just go there all the time and fish, and they don't ask for permission. I never saw that, 25 years ago. No one would ever come in like that and just start fishing in front of right in front of our cabin. So people are, not so much respecting some of those boundaries nowadays. But, I think most hunters still know and respect some of those boundaries that are in place that have been in place for a while, for quite some time. You know, not to go into someone else's hunting area and start, goose hunting or moose or caribou, those kinds of things.
Right. Okay. And you mentioned that you had to leave your community to go to high school. Where did you go, and what was that experience like for you to have to leave your community so young?
Well, it was hard. I think I remember we didn't really have a choice. I don't remember being asked, "Do you want to go or not?" It was like you're gonna go to school in Timmins next fall. You're gonna go live in a home there. That's what we were told. So I found it really hard, to be honest. I didn't really like the first year. I had a hard time. I had some really bad experiences in the home I was staying in. So I found it really difficult. The second year, third year wasn't too bad. It was the homes I was in were much better. But I still struggled with just the everyday life of being in the city, being around non First Nation people, and not being able to speak English very well, and encountering like racism and stuff like that, which was very much out in the open still in those days in Northern Ontario. So I found it really hard. I found it really hard, but at the same time, I was able to get involved, and I got involved in sports. I got involved in music. Those were some of the things that really helped me through high school. especially living in a boarding home. And wrestling, I got really close with the wrestling team. There were about 30 of us on that wrestling team, so we were pretty close. Where most of us were like, we're like brothers, we're like family, and we looked after each other. So that was very good for me because it helped when there were people that wanted to come and bully me. Then the whole wrestling team would back me, and nobody wanted to really mess around with the wrestlers because they were pretty tough. Wrestling's a tough sport, and they had some really good wrestlers on the team at that time, or top three in Canada, and were placing in the top, three and all in the provincial. So there were some really good wrestlers. They had a really good team during that era when I was involved. So yeah, so there were some really hard things, but there were also some really good things as well. Just like anything else that life throws at you, right?
Right. And you graduated from high school there, or?
No, I went back home, probably third year. I was somewhere in there. I had to go back home, and I went to high school. I finished my high school at home, the local high school there.
Oh, okay. And you mentioned you ended up going to post-secondary. Where'd you go and what'd you study?
I went back to Timmins. I went to Northern College. I attended the paramedic program there back in whatever it was, 91, 92. I can't remember what it was, but because going way back. Actually, no, I think it was much later. Anyway, somewhere in there. I went back and took the paramedic program and I graduated from Northern College. And then I went on to work mostly in the North as a medic for 10 years.
Oh,
But I spent some time in the West. I worked as a medic out there. I also went back to school and part time and did business and finance and different things like that part time and while I was working over the years. So yeah, but yeah, I did my college studies in Timmins in South Porcupine there.
yeah. Oh, okay, cool. And you also talked about getting into music when you were in high school. So how did you start getting into that, and who were your main influences?
Well, music, I think, was always sort of there in the background. Sometimes it was in the forefront throughout my life because my mom and a lot of the people in my family were playing instruments. They were jamming on the guitar and playing old rock tunes, or country or gospel, you name it, right? As you know, our people were pretty musical, so I was always around it. And eventually, when I went to high school, there was a music class that I got to go and join. I did the percussion, and I was, on the drums for that period, learning how to play the drums and studying percussion in high school, which I found really fun. I really enjoyed that actually, and it got me, really more interested in music and wanting to continue to learn and play. Whether it was drums or whether it was guitar and different things like that. It really it sparked my interest, even more when it came to music.
And so how did the guitar come along?
Guitar, I was already playing guitar before I took my percussion in high school. My mom actually always had a guitar in the house, so that's where I got my first kind of real experience with the guitar. And I couldn't play as a young boy, but I tried to play. And when I realized that I couldn't play, I just kind of focused on more singing. I was singing a lot as a young boy. I just really had a knack for melodies, and I really liked to sing along to records because my mom had records and she had a record player. So that was something I really enjoyed doing, at a young age. And because I couldn't really play the guitar, I couldn't really learn how to play it. I was starting to, lean towards singing along to, records and kind of honing my voice a little bit, I guess. That's kind of my really early experience and inspirations when it came to music.
And when was the first time that you played live in front of an audience?
Oh yeah, that was in front of the community back home. There was a community hall event going on, and there was a live band. and I believe, if I recall correctly, one of my older relatives was the lead guy in the band. He said, "Hey, anyone want to come up and sing a song?" And for whatever reason, I just raised my hand and said, "I'll sing a song." I might have been 15 or 16. Anyway, so he's like, "Yeah, all right, come on up and sing." So I went up and I sang a CCR tune, and that was the first time. That was the first time I ever sang in front of anyone other than my own family. So I felt like it was a terrible, terrible performance, and so I kind of walked off the stage after I was done in shame. And the next day, I spent the whole day in bed with a splitting headache, you know, worrying about how awful I sounded, and it was kind of funny.
Which CCR song do you remember?
I think it was "Who'll Stop the Rain."
Oh, okay. That's a good one.
Yeah.
And when did you start writing your own music?
Well, I was already dabbling a little bit in my late teens, early 20s. I was just kind of playing around with different things, like writing stuff down and seeing, if I could actually write a tune. And I was, writing songs at late teens, early 20s. They just weren't great songs, they were songs, but they weren't the greatest. And as I got older, I kind of got busy with life, and family and school and working, and so music wasn't always something that I could do. Even though I really enjoyed it, I really love singing on the guitar. I just wasn't able to give it the time I wanted to give it. It wasn't until later in my late 20s that I started to revisit, music and start writing songs again. And the reason why I chose to like play original songs and write original songs was because I felt like it was hard to find people to jam with, and so a lot of times I end up playing by myself, and so I started just kind of writing my own stuff. I couldn't find anyone who wanted to play my original stuff for years, up until 2011 when I met the guys from Midnight Shine.
And how did you guys get together? And
Well, I was asked to come and play actually for as an opening act for Trooper back then, and I didn't have a band obviously, and they wanted me to have a band. So I asked a couple of the other guys that I knew in the region, like George Gillis was someone who I knew, from traveling around and doing other shows up north. He was, well known as a drummer, and so I called him up and to see if he would be interested, and then he kind of reined the other guys in, Zach and Stan, and that's kind of how that whole thing started.
yeah, and you guys, put out how many albums? A few albums.
We did three. We did three albums together. We did a fourth one, which was basically the first one, but remastered with some bonus tracks. So technically, we did four albums together.
Yeah, and you guys played some pretty big gigs. Like you guys were on TV and you're in Ottawa. What's one of your more memorable or favorite shows that you guys did?
Well, I think it would have been Aboriginal Day in live. We did a live performance when we were in Winnipeg at the Forks. I think that's probably one of my most memorable shows that we had done. We also did a whole bunch of shows back to back in Canadian Music Week one year. I think we did 6 shows that week, and we ended up doing a show. The last show we did was at the Horseshoe on a Friday night or something. It was crazy. So we really rocked that joint that night. We had a really good time. Which is actually looking back on some of our old performances. I've never watched any of them ever, ever. I've never watched videos of Midnight Shine up until maybe about 5 days ago. I started to look back at some of our old videos and footage that we've had, and man, it just kind of blew me away. Like we were, we were pretty good. We were really good, and I think that's probably why we garnered the attention of big agents and different people in the industry in those days. It was a huge thing for us.
Yeah, for sure. And what happened at the end? Like you guys aren't together anymore.
Well, I mean, we just COVID happened. We did our last show in 2019, and ever since COVID, we just like we've never picked things up again. I guess we're technically on a hiatus
Mhm.
since COVID. But I hope. I don't know. I mean, I hope someday, like, we could get back together and sit down and talk and see if, we wanna come together and look at another album. I don't know. Like, I mean, it all depends on the other guys, I guess.
Yeah. Okay. And I know you have this Gibson acoustic guitar and like a hummingbird, I think. And I know those aren't cheap. So how do you maintain it up there in Attawapiskat with the cold climate and the dry air, and you got to worry about humidity?
Yeah, it's very it's very hard on acoustic guitars. That guitar has been through a lot. First of all, it's got a cracked headstock on it. The
Oh,
headstock came off right in half, maybe going back to 2018, that where it got knocked off a guitar stand and fell onto. We were in a podium, oh, sorry, an amphitheater outside. It was concrete, the stage, and it landed right on the headstock and it cracked right in half. So that guitar has seen some, it's seen better days. And there's some cracks from the dryness, right, and up from being up north in the actual the body itself on the top side of it. So I've had some structural work done. I had to get that repaired because it was if it was affecting the tone and the tuning. So that was all fixed, and then I had to. What I do to keep them humidified is I keep them in the cases, and I've been using these D'Addario humidifiers for acoustics.
right.
These little pouches that go in sound hole, and there's another one that goes in the front compartment, and it keeps the guitars humidified. So that's kind of the best thing for me.
So after Midnight Shine, you've continued to, write and record your own music. So how does that work? So you're based in that Attawapiskat. Where do you go to record and record your albums and your singles?
Yeah, I mean, I've written most of the writing I've done up there at home. I do have a home studio I work at quite a bit, and I've done some recording in there as well for the last two albums I put out for my solo stuff. The first one I put out, which was Magic Hits, I recorded that album remotely because it was during the COVID era when there was no travel and things like that. So everyone who contributed to that record each worked on that record from their own space in their house or their home or wherever they were. So it was very remarkable, quite remarkable how that album came together and how it turned out. I was quite really surprised how well it worked out, considering that it was all worked on remotely. With the technology these days, I think is pretty much you can do almost anything when it comes to audio recording now. The second one, I actually went down to Nashville to record because that was something I really wanted to do. We went down there and recorded the Precious Diamonds down in Nashville with a producer named Colin Linden, and we had a band that we worked with in the room, and we played together as a band as we recorded that album, which is something new that I've never done before. So it was such a good learning experience for me, and also a real eye opener to see how these musicians work down there. They're just so good, amazing at what they do, and so talented and so kind. Everyone's so nice to each other down there, and everyone knows each other. And you just never know who's going to come walking through the door when you're there recording. So, yeah, it was fun.
Oh, cool. And how do you fund those? Like, is it are you self producing them or like arts councils and stuff like that? Or
Well, I mean, I've relied heavily on grants through Ontario Arts Council, the Canada Council for the Arts, Factor Canada. Those are some places that I've applied to over the years that have really helped fund those projects. But I've also, um, but the label I created, the independent label I created years ago, also supports those types of activities. So I've always you know, put money towards the label. Whatever money that whatever revenue that I generate through music, whether it's live shows, whether it's royalties, I put all that aside for the label. So I draw on those revenues to be able to tour, to be able to record, market, do all that stuff because some of the grants don't always come back in my favor. Sometimes they do, but there are times where they don't get approved. So I have to rely on those funds that I put aside and into the label to be able to finance a lot of that stuff. So a lot of it is really self-financed, and touring and going out on the road is something I have to pay for as well. And I've been doing that for many years. To launch a music career from Attawapiskat is not easy. It's actually near impossible to do, because of logistically where you live, geographically, you're just so far away from everything else, and the cost of airline tickets are going up, especially out of the north. We're paying 2,500 return just to Timmins, which is outrageous. 10 years ago it was half that price. Like, I just don't know. I don't even know what's going on anymore. It's extremely expensive, but we've been able to make it work, and we've gotten creative about how we do things over the years, and so far it's gotten me to where I am right now. And I think I feel like a lot of the heavy lifting is kind of behind me right now. There's a few more things that I'm working on this year, that I'd like to get out into the world, and we'll see where things go.
And over the years, you've like with Midnight Shine in your solo career, you've incorporated Cree into your songs. So you got like the Heart of Gold cover.
Niwi matisen, niwi minwan, inatwabe mo, kamenote.
Yeah, Notawi.
Ewanishkaya, newo ne hawa.
You got I don't know if I'm saying this right. Kiash.
Yes, yeah.
Kayashka kipe moteche. Gabich na metawa kesa.
Is it hard to write Cree into songs, like because of the word structure, or to try to make it rhyme, or how different is it to write a song in Cree compared to English?
Well, it can be challenging, but it could also be easy, because a lot of if you wanted to get rhyming, I think it actually works out really well for rhyming. If you're trying to rhyme the words, you could just say them a certain way to make them rhyme, and it still means the same thing, right? So in some ways it's easy, and in other ways it could be a little hard, because again, it's just a different way of like using your voice too, I find. And I think the sounds are more like they're more harsh too, like compared to singing in English. So that's something I really had to get used to, and trying to find a nice sort of pocket, to sing in Cree. It took a little while for me to get comfortable in doing that, especially when I'm singing on the guitar anyway. But I mean, I sing a lot on the drum too, in the language, which is different. But singing on the guitar is also different too. Not quite the same.
Hmm. And why was that important for you to include Cree in some of your music?
Well, there were a couple of reasons. I think first of all, I wanted to do something different. Something that made me different and unique than the other artists that are out there. And I don't draw on all these other parts that make Adrian Sutherland up, like my Cree. I don't draw on I grew up doing powwow, dancing, singing in the drum, like for years and years. I did that, and I don't draw on any of that really, just a little tiny bit here and there. I have a very spiritual background, and I don't bring any of that stuff. So I just thought that maybe I should start you know grabbing some of those different parts of me, and trying to bring those into the music a little more. And I think the language was the first thing that kind of jumped out at me, because as a language speaker, I think it's really important for me to help, to do my part, in preserving the language. And I know there's a lot of people out there, I think, that are trying to reconnect and trying to learn their language. And I thought it would be, a really nice way to help, do my part, and do it through music, and make these songs in Cree, so that people could enjoy. People could go and sing along, and sing the words, and learn them, memorize them like you would memorize any other song. And it would be like speaking your own language at the same time. So I thought it would be a really cool way to do it.
I want to ask about the song James Bay from when you were with Midnight Shine. It's one of my favorite songs just because it's something that resonates with me, especially when I was living like in Thunder Bay and Toronto. I was away from the region for like 10 years, and then I would hear that song. So that kind of spoke to me. It's like, yeah, I need to get closer to home. But also at the beginning, there's someone talking in Cree before we get into the music. What's the story behind that?
There was a message there. I just thought it would have been nice to put that in there for language speakers that maybe that were listening to the song and interesting. I didn't know that this guy was, you know, really, he thought that way. He was such a deep thinker or whatever. But it was just a message I put in there for people to basically like, the old people. I forget what I said, but it was something to do with the old people, like our ancestors. They had a hard life. They worked really hard. They believed that every day they would be fine. With every ounce of their being and with their hearts, they believed that they would be okay. And I think we should follow in their footsteps. We should, learn from that. And if we believe it in our hearts that things are going to work out, they believed in the land, they believed in Creator, they believed in that water and everything, the sky. Why aren't we doing the same thing? That's kind of like the message I was going for.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you grew up speaking Cree, right? Was that your first language?
Yeah. Yeah, it was my first language. English is the second language, actually, and we didn't speak very much English at all growing up. And in the school, like that's the only place we spoke English, but nobody really spoke English in school, just the teacher. So yeah, Cree was my first language, and I grew up speaking it, and I'm fluent. I'm fluent in the language. I'm still learning today, like, words and how to string words together. And there's just so much to know about the language. I've been very lucky. I've been very lucky to be able to retain my language, and I'm grateful for that. And continuing to learn about the language, I think, is very, very important. I think for me, and hopefully someday, maybe I'll be in a position to share and teach more for people that are wanting to learn certain things about the language.
And do you speak it to your kids?
Yeah, I speak it to my kids, but the kids, like, I don't know. For example, as you know, Moose City, Moose Factory, Albany, Cache, all the communities on the coast. There's only one that got language retention. Guess which one?
Attawapiskat, I guess.
No,
No.
Quechua.
Oh, Szechuan. Okay.
So there's a serious issue. There's a serious problem there, and I think it comes down to Cree immersion in the schools. The only one that has full Cree immersion is Quechua. That's why their kids are very fluent and they could speak, eh?
Hmm.
But the rest of the communities are failing miserably. And so even in my own home, it's hard, to speak Cree, and they understand, but they're not really speaking it. So it's hard. They're all English, bro, like they're on their games or whatever, stuff like that. I hear them. They're using the English language, and they don't want to use their own language. But I think a lot of it has to do with the schools and the Cree immersion, that they don't have Cree immersion in their schools. They're just straight on, full on English at school all the time.
So, what can we do then to try to, preserve and revitalize the language?
Well, I think for sure we got to use the language. That's the first thing. Is the language has to be used in everything that they're doing in the communities. I think if there's an opportunity for anyone who doesn't know their language to go immerse themselves in the language, that's going to be the best way for them to learn that language. It doesn't matter what language it is. But if you try to teach yourself, or if you try to learn it through books and different things like that, it's much harder to learn and retain it. But if you immerse yourself in it, that's the best way to learn a language, and that's I think that's going to be probably something that the communities are going to have to really work hard towards in the next little while before, a lot of our, I mean, there's still very fluent speakers, lots like my age too, and younger, but a lot of those elders that are passing away are taking the language with them, and so it's kind of a scary thought, to think that, oh, someday these elders are all going to pass on,
Hmm.
and with that, that knowledge is going to be gone forever, right?
Yeah, for sure. And that's part of the reason why I'm starting kind of my journey to try to learn. I feel like taking a personal sense of responsibility that I should, but definitely feel like our communities could be doing more because I found that was part of the challenge is finding resources
Yeah.
to try to learn because there's not a whole lot. So it's just something that comes up for me, and maybe hopefully this whole project and can help, you know, contribute to that conversation and that about how we need to revitalize language in our communities.
I think it's really scary to think that, our kids are not speaking the language, and I think for me personally, I just before we move on from this whole language subject, but I think there are people out there that want to put together these types of programs that are Cree immersion or whatever. For example, we I was proposing to do a land-based Cree immersion learning for the region, and anybody outside that was from had ties to Mishkegowuk region, but there was no interest. Nobody wanted to fund it, not even the tribal councils. Nobody wanted to fund any of it. So I was just like very shocked that no one would want to put any funding towards something like that because it's such an amazing way to learn. What other way to do it than just to go out to the land and learn everything about language and how you did this and that and learn it in the language at the same time. And you know, there would be the way had designed it was that there would be safe words that we would use if we had to absolutely come out of the Cree and to know if it was an emergency or if there was something, for example, that we had to get across that was important for information purposes. But I thought it was a really good idea, but no one jumped on it. I was really surprised, and disappointed.
Right. Yeah, because I know a lot of other communities are doing that, like down south, they're doing having these language immersion camps and stuff like that. So,
Yeah.
and I didn't see anything like that happening for in our region.
And Mushkegowuk has millions and millions and millions of dollars that they're hoarding, and they're not using it for those types of things, which I don't understand.
Hmm. And I wanted to ask you about your business because you mentioned that you went back to school to study business, and I remember you one of the last times I was in Attawapiskat, I came to it's like a restaurant or something, and I guess you own that. You run a restaurant. How did that come about?
Yeah. So what was my wife and my daughters that when you were really interested in that? It wasn't my thing, so I was just there to support them and help them make it happen. And so we've been doing that now since going on 8 years now, I think. It doesn't seem like 8 years, but we started off in just our house, cooking in the house, and doing takeout, with just conventional ovens, nothing fancy. And then it got really busy, we just couldn't keep up with our conventional stove and oven in the house. We just couldn't keep up with the orders, so we looked at growing and expanding, and we built this building that you probably went in to have, sat down and might have had a meal in when you came up, or a coffee or whatever. Just some place where people could go, and it was an existing business already when we bought it. It just had not been running anymore, so we bought it, we acquired it, and then we got it up and running again. It took a little while, but yeah, 8 years has gone by, and it's still going. There's been a lot of ups and downs, and running a business like that in the far north, remote far north, is actually really extremely difficult and extremely expensive. But we've managed to make it work, and we've had a really past couple, maybe 2 years have been pretty good for us. We've seen some growth, and we're not sure. The future always remains uncertain, but for now, we're moving forward, business as usual. We're going to be doing some more expansion. Hopefully this winter we're going to buy some more equipment to kind of keep up with the demand a little bit. And who knows? Who knows? Well, we'll see how things go for the next year. And winter road season is always the easiest time for us because it's the cheapest to ship. Right? We just go to the train every Friday and pick up our stuff, and that's it. Like as opposed to flying everything up for thousands of dollars on the airlines, it's just crazy. Um, but yeah, so wintertime is the easiest for us, and hopefully, hopefully we can keep it going.
Yeah, for sure. And another thing I wanted to ask about is you mentioned how you grew up with the strong spirituality, and that like our communities tend to be have a lot of Christian influence. So how were you able to get into that when you were growing up?
Well, it was very, the spirituality, traditional spirituality was very hidden. It wasn't very, it was not out in the open. And open. I know a lot of people didn't talk about it. And I think when I think about it now, my grandmother was very Catholic. That's what she did, right? She just wanted nothing to do with the traditional spirituality. So she just wanted us to go to church, and that's all she ever talked about was, never mind that stuff, just read the Bible and go to church. That was her thing, right? And which is fine, which is, I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. And we did that, we, as kids, we had, that was just part of what we did. And my grandfather on the other side was the other way. He was traditional, spiritual guy. He never went to church. Well, he did go to church, but rarely, he wasn't there every Sunday, at every Sunday mass or anything like that. But he still respect and honored the church, so I was able to see some stuff, through my grandfather, and then later on, as I got a little older, when I was ready to kind of open myself up to it more, in my when probably in my early 20s, I started to go to these ceremonies that were in Moose Factory, at French River, with John and Linda Turner. They were doing ceremonies up there with the O'Cheese family. So that's where I started going and attending those regularly. And that's where I got to know them and those ceremonies. And I got to know myself, and I started going regularly. And that's kind of where I started, my real learning started, in my early 20s. But it came really quick because my language, it just was like, it's like a switch went off. As soon as I heard the songs, as soon as I heard everything, and it was all in my language, so it was very, very easy for me to like retain everything. And I could just hear one song once, and I could sing it back to the old man, right? If he was teaching me, and it was just very, very fast. So I think a lot of that, I think because I grew up singing powwow and was around that, and I knew how to sing powwow very good, and then I spoke my language. I think it just came together because of those different things I had. It came very naturally to me to be able to learn the ceremony songs, and also learn about different things that related to spirituality. It just came very natural to me, and it made sense to me, because I knew the language, and I think that's another reason why I was able to retain it all really quick.
Last thing I wanted to ask about was the book that you have coming out, The Work of Our Hands, a Cree Meditation in the Real World. So, what can you tell me about this book and how did it come about?
Well, I think the earliest sort of memories of me wanting to share my experiences go back to when I was a young man, when I was out on the land, when I'd land on the beach out on James Bay Coast while we were traveling up north, and there were like 40, 50 seals all beached on this island, things like that you don't get to see every day. And I would go over and I would just be with these seals. They wouldn't be scared of us at all. They would just be lying around there like ignoring us. So it was like, it was the strangest thing, I thought. But also I always found it very amazing too, that I lived in that world. I got to experience that whole thing, so those were my first kind of like, oh, maybe someday I could write about this, or share this experience. Or I would say like, oh, I wish I could show this to my friends, or I wish I could share this moment. Those were kind of my first sort of feelings when I would, see those kinds of things. Or we would run into a polar bear or something like that. Those are some of my first kind of feelings. Oh man, that was kind of a cool, scary, but cool experience. I wish I could share that. So, as a young man, I thought right away, I think someday maybe I could share these experiences, with the world. That's kind of the first thought of it. And then as I got a little older, I started thinking about maybe a book, doing a book someday, and just kind of writing about, my worldviews and my experiences and different things, that I've done and continue to do. And just right before COVID, we were having dinner with an artist who had just finished writing a book, and we got talking a little bit, and then he connected us with a publisher, and my team, my manager, they were back and forth for months pitching this idea of me writing a book for them, and that's how it all sort of came about. The opportunity was presented to us after that back and forth, and I said yes.
And how long did it take to write it?
I think we might have been almost 4 years to to from start to finish. But the book's been done for a little while. It took a little while to really kind of get a flow and pick out what we wanted to talk about, and so it took a little while to shape it. But once we did that, it happened pretty quickly.
What was your writing process like? Like what time of day, or how many hours per day, or?
It was kind of varied. Sometimes I did even just 10 minutes of writing. Sometimes I did an hour, and my longest writing would have been about 4 hours in a day. That's about as long as I could go when it came to writing. So most of the time, I wrote at home in my studio. Sometimes I wrote when I was traveling, but most times I felt comfortable writing in my studio. So that's kind of where most of my writing happened.
Oh, okay. Right on, man. Cool. Well, I'm looking forward to reading that and checking that out when it comes out. So this is a Cree learning podcast. So did you have anything in mind that you wanted to teach me and other people who might be listening?
Sure. I was out today downtown Toronto, and it felt a little cold out today. I thought, ooh. So we'll kind of stick with weather, and maybe we'll learn about how to say it feels cold today.
Hmm.
And so we'll do it. We'll do the cold part, which is takayao.
Right. Takayal. Yeah.
Cool, takayao. But if we want to say it feels cold, tahin dagon.
Tahin dagon.
Yeah. But if we want to say
Tahin dagon anush, which means like now, right?
yeah,
Tahin dagon anush.
yeah,
So it feels cold. That's what you're literally saying. It feels cold
yeah,
right now.
it feels cold right now.
Tahin dagon anush.
Mm.
Oh, okay. Actually, just given some of the stuff that we talked about, how would you say then I'm a writer or I wrote a book?
Oh, I don't know. I guess I would say I'm a storyteller. Maybe
Okay.
I would say Tabachamuso. I don't know. Uh,
Gabacho.
Tabachamuso.
The magic.
Tabachamuso. Somebody who tells stories.
Oh, okay.
Like somebody who sings a lot, you would say Nigamuso
Negamuso.
and Tabachamuso. I would say I wrote a book, Masanahigan, but that's very vague.
Oh, okay.
Masanahigan. But you can say Masanahigan. I wrote
Mm-hmm. Kamasan.
Nana Hukigwan Tabadutaman. I talk about a lot of different things in that book.
Oh,
Nanaho means a lot of different things.
anajo.
Kekwana,
Ekwana.
things, right?
Uh-huh.
Gitabaduten, I talked about.
Gigo kabat that then? Wait, how do you say?
Yeah. Gitabaduten.
Gi kobato den.
Gi
Gi
te
gite
patuten.
gite batoten.
There you go.
Okay.
Like the Bachamoon story, eh? Or
Yeah, the badge bone. Yeah. Okay.
Batuten, yeah. I talked
Batoten.
about a lot of things.
Yeah.
A lot of things. And there's a lot of different ways to say it, I guess. And kind of writing a book. I don't even know how. That's how I would probably describe it to somebody I was telling. In maybe if I was speaking to an elderly person, I would tell them, "Oh, yeah, masanahigan, kispagaw naman masanahigan kay Gusistan." It's very thick. The book it wasn't that thick, but I would tell them it's a big book, and I wrote about all these different things. I would tell them, right?
Right.
So they would get it. Oh, I see. So you wrote this. You wrote a book. Yeah.
Right. Okay. Okay. Well, awesome, Adrian. Well, thanks so much for taking the time to talk to me and share your story and for the Cree lesson here at the end. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me, Lenny. It was good to see you again, and I hope we can do this again before too long.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay.
Heading somewhere special, just me and the blue. Heading to my camp on a bay, where the black spruce stand in the heart of the north. Hoping the sunrise, where the shadows.
So that was my conversation with Adrian Sutherland. I read his book, and there's so much more to his story that we didn't get into during our chat. Maybe he was saving it for the book. I don't know. But it is a great read, and he really digs deep and bears his story and his soul. I especially enjoyed his anecdotes about being out on the land. If you noticed, a lot of times where I ask people about hunting stories, like getting their first goose. I just always enjoy hearing those kinds of stories. So talks about that, plus, his healing journey and all the things that he has gone through. So check out his book, his memoir, The Work of Our Hands, A Cree Meditation on the Real World. It's now available wherever you get your books. I got mine from Indigo. During the segment, we featured a few of his songs. I'm Not Afraid, which is his latest single. We also featured Notawi, or Father, which is from 2023. And, of course, we talked about James Bay from when he was in the band Midnight Shine. So you could find his music on most music streaming platforms or go to adriansutherlandmusic.com. So shimigwich to Adrian for taking the time to talk to me and share his story. So that's it for this episode. I'm just going to continue with the flashcards, and we'll see how much my vocabulary has grown by the next episode. So what did you think of Adrian's story? Do you plan to read his book? What language learning methods or systems would you recommend? Send us a message on our website, apashishpodcast.ca, or email us at apashish@gmail.com. Sign up for our Substack. Don't forget to leave a review on our various platforms and our website. Shimigwich for listening. Egade. Apashish, a Cree learning podcast, is produced and hosted by Lenny Carpenter. Additional editing by Tyler Anjikaneb. Logo design by Robin Kioki. Goose Call provided by my niece, Harlow Carpenter. Music by Lenny Carpenter. Have any questions, feedback, or resources to share? Submit a message on our website, apashishpodcast.ca, or email us at apashish@gmail.com. Visit our website to listen to past episodes, view guest bios, and access Cree learning resources. Apashish is supported by the Indigenous Green Office. Greater Yellow Lake recording by Thomas McGarrian. Sharp-tailed grouse recording by Andrew Spencer. These and other wildlife recordings are accessible at www.zeno-canto.org. Miigwech for listening.